topic, but people need regular topics too.
Okay, we're good to go. Live streaming. Bye. Have a great
Right.
show.
Are you curious about bodies, pleasure, and possibilities? And what about curious about what others are up to on the planet when it comes to pleasure, sex, and play? Have you considered what pleasure can do for your life, your body, and your bank account? Do you know something magical, delightful, and out of this world orgasmic is not only possible for you, but totally available to you? If you're ready to be the magical, sexual, sexy beast you know you can be, and you just need the tools to get there, you're in the right place. Now, here is the host of The Pleasure Zone, sex, relationship, and intimacy coach and holistic health practitioner, Milica Jelenic.
Well, welcome, my sweet pleasure seekers. We are like nearing the end of the year of 2024, and we're heading into the next year. And usually I do something around, what to do for Christmas presents, etc. But I think that, manifesting pleasure and achieving sexual fulfillment is a great gift to give to yourself and your partner slash partners, depending on if you're polyamorous or you're monogamous or you're looking or you're just out there having fun. So we are going to be talking about how to manifest your goals, but also at some point, and I have talked about this topic before, is how to use sex for manifesting your targets, your goals, your all those great things, right? So sex is amazing and can be used for many different things. So go back and listen to some of my episodes on like how to use sex for like sexual magicism, how to use sex to create and generate things in your life, how to use orgasms for that. And I'm sure that I will be doing more episodes on that because there's never too much info on out there about that. So I think one of the things before I dive too deep is to let you guys know why I'm here. Why do I talk about what I talk about? And one of the reasons that I talk about what I talk about is because I have for a very long time, since I can remember I was about 12, or actually probably earlier than that, but I didn't have words for it, is I've had a fascination with human sexuality, with all the different options of human sexuality, what people do. I didn't really know a lot of details, but what I did know was there was a show that came on every Sunday night in Canada called Sunday Night Sex Show with Sue. And man, she was educational. She was a nurse and a sex educator. And the things that she taught were phenomenal. And she was on the radio, so you could like secretly listen to her in your bedroom, like I did, and get fully educated on different things to do with sex. So, one of the things when I would listen to her was I have like an incredible ability to visualize. So, even though the show was all audio, no visual, the way she would describe things like positions and things to do, even as a 12-year-old, I was like, I'm going to keep that under my hat for future, just like the curiosity. I remember thinking, oh, well, that's a good idea. I'm going to remember that. And one of the things that she was really clear on was communication and consent. Also, when I was listening to her at the time, she was also really big on uh, being sexually safe. So using all things like uh, condoms and lubricants and everything to make sure that you're not passing on STDs, as they called them at the time, STIs as we call them now. Amazing, amazing woman. So little did I know as a little kid listening to this show at the age of 12. And no, my mother was not a bad mother. She was probably listening to the show in her room herself, because I'm pretty sure I heard her listening to it on occasion as well. She probably didn't know I was listening to it at the age of 12, probably thought I was in bed sleeping at 8 o'clock at night, but no, lo and behold, I was being educated by Sue. And one of the things that I found um, fascinating, even after that, would be that is like if I could take a class in anything that would involve talk about human sexuality, I was in. So in high school, even there were classes that, if there's biology, I want to know it. If there, I took all whatever I could in biology and sciences. If there was a sociology class where we actually ended up looking at some different interesting cultural things to do with some tribes that had used sex as a play tool for children. So children would actually learn how to sexually pleasure each other through a tribe that I'm not even going to try and say their name because it has a click sound and I don't want to massacre the name. But that had me super curious, which led to other curiosities in university to take classes in different things like history of sexuality and all kinds of weird and interesting, anything I could take that was going to get me through university and be interesting at the same time. That's what I did. And so a lot of my classes led to that and later led to me having studying more and becoming a sex and intimacy coach and a relationship coach, as well as a holistic health practitioner. And I think those really go well in tandem with each other. So a lot of times in my holistic health practice, it comes down to a lot of times relationships with self and relationships with others that are actually causing stressors that are creating health issues. So yeah, I found over the years that my work has all culminated into this giant, wonderful, fluffy pile of interesting things. And that's what I offer the world. So tonight we're going to be manifesting pleasure and achieving sexual fulfillment. And I think one of the things to do first is define what is sexual fulfillment. And I want to be really clear that sexual fulfillment does not require you to have an orgasm. What? Stop, hold on, breaks, go backwards. Say that again. Sexual fulfillment is not actually the same as orgasm. So a lot of times I think what happens is it gets and sexually understood as if you're sexually fulfilled, that means you're having orgasms. So no, that's not true. And I think it's also something that comes up in relationships a lot of times where there's an expectation that what is supposed to happen is penetration to lead to sexual fulfillment, i.e., orgasm, in the opinion of the partners, but that's not it either. So you can have sexual fulfillment by doing so many things. As you might have realized after this show has been going for over 10 years and well close to 500 episodes or more, I don't even know anymore, you will probably realize that there's a lot of options out there for sexual fulfillment. So let's get clear. One of the ways that I would describe sexual fulfillment, and I kind of wrote a few things down so that I could uh, share that with you. One of the ways I would describe sexual fulfillment is that it's where you actually feel that your life and your sexual life is contributing to your life and your relationships, or a relationship if you have one. And what it means is that you have like the emotional connection, you have the physical connection, and it lines up with things like your values, your desires, and it also has spiritual connection. So one of the things that I think is often lacking maybe in a lot of how-to books, like how to give a really great blowjob, is yes, we understand the physiology of bodies. We understand what to do to arouse a body. And that's not all bodies, that's a general populace. How to have emotional intimacy, a lot of people can't or don't know how to because, childhood trauma, teenage life trauma has prevented emotional intimacy, not really knowing how to do that. Fear of abandonment will create emotional intimacy issues, fear of rejection, all kinds of things will create emotional intimacy issues, trust, you name it. So, how do you have emotional intimacy, physical pleasure, and then also spiritual connection that is going to help you both grow, both or all people involved grow as human beings, right? So, I think those are all really important for sexual fulfillment. And then the question is like, how do we actually know what we want in order to be sexually fulfilled? Like, I have a lot of people who will come and say, well, it's just, I don't even care about sex anymore. Oh, well, I'm over 60, so who cares? I'm like, okay, but it mattered to you 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So when did you decide that sex became unimportant? When did you decide that it's an age thing or that you're using aging as an excuse to not have sexual pleasure? So where did that all happen? And a lot of times it comes down to like lack of communication in the relationship where people just go, yeah, we don't even know anymore what to say to each other or what to do. My partner doesn't listen, so who cares? I surrender. I'm just going to have a roommate for the rest of my life. Um, so that can happen. And then that ends up creating that roommate for the rest of your life with no sexual fulfillment. Where sexual fulfillment can actually help you. And as we know in the last few episodes that I've been talking about, how it can help reduce anxiety, how it can help your body heal. So it improves health, it improves your mental health, your physical health, and as you learn to communicate about your desires, it can improve your communication skills as well, and it can improve your relationship in general. So these are all pretty important things to have in order to have a fulfilling relationship, right? Yes, it's true. So communication, as I was saying, was probably one of the barriers to actually having your desires fulfilled, your pleasure fulfilled. So how do we turn that around? And one of the things is to have self-reflection. So self-reflection comes in a few different ways. One of the things you can do for self-reflection is look at where you're feeling like your needs aren't met. Like, where do you feel there's a gap or a loss? And what is that loss? So if you're feeling like, okay, we have quickies, but what I really need is sex that goes longer. And then you got to ask yourself, is it about the length of time or is it about the depth of connection? Because sometimes it's about the depth of connection that you desire. And is it also about stimulation? Is it more about not necessarily the length of penetration, but it could be like, how do we have foreplay all day long? So that would be fun too. Where can you incorporate more fantasies and where can you look at the things that you enjoy that maybe you haven't tried? Maybe you've brushed them aside because anytime you brought them up with your partner, they're like, nah, I don't know. I don't know. And a lot of times it's not that they don't want to do it, they don't know how to. So sometimes it just requires some creativity, also, safe words, just so you know, even if you're having very vanilla sex, having a safe word to say, red, that's something that you don't want to do when it starts to happen, red, and then that communication can really help to move forward. Having some discussions ahead of time, especially if it involves fantasies that may be out of the ordinary from what you normally do, you're going to want to be able to know that you're safe, build that sense of um, deeper connection by feeling safe so you don't feel abandoned. You have more of emotional connection. So you also feel like the desire to be with your partner and to please them as well as being pleased, or partners, because this applies to all kinds of relationship situations that we're talking pleasure oriented. So I think if you look at some of the things in your life, if you don't have a lot of sexual experience, but maybe you have a lot of sexual fantasies, you can, with self-reflection, you can start writing them down. Start writing down the things that you're really curious about, that you'd like to try, things maybe that you have tried in the past that you really liked, that you'd like to bring into your relationship. Maybe you didn't try them with this person you're with, maybe you've tried them with other people. So bringing them into your relationship and seeing how it works with your dynamic is a really good thing to do. Definitely have the conversation first, like, hey, you know what I really like? I like a good spanking. Instead of just like handing your partner a paddle one day out of the blue in the middle of sex and going, spank me. And they're like, what? And they've never spanked you before. They might be like alarmed. So discussing it in advance can be really helpful. And if you need to show them examples or show them where you like things done, like we're going to use spanking as the example, then give them a little demo, like where you'd like it. Maybe you'd like to be spanked on the nipples. Maybe you'd like to be spanked on your buttocks. Everybody has a preference. There's all different parts of the body that can be spanked or flogged or paddled. I'm just throwing out ideas because, impact play is fun. If you enjoy it. I'm not saying it's fun for everybody. It's fun for those who enjoy it. So in the communication, what you want to talk about are some of the things that you would like to try, some of the boundaries you have, be really clear with your safe words, and just have it as a conversation first. The thing is that what I know is if you can't talk about it with your partner, why are you trying to do it? Like, if you can't say, I want to give you a blowjob in the backfield, and you're like, that's embarrassing. If it's embarrassing to say it, then trust me, you're going to be more embarrassed trying to do it. So, as you can say these things, it's really helpful in communicating to be able to move forward with trying them out. So we're going to talk more about some of the steps to look at what do you desire, and then what some of the barriers might be that you need to break down so that you can achieve your pleasure fulfillment and manifest your pleasure fulfillment in this next coming few months, never mind year. Let's make this happen. All right, you're listening to the Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome, my sweet pleasure seekers. For those of you who are jumping on now, we are talking about manifesting our pleasure targets in the next pleasure goals, pleasure targets, whatever you want to call them. Cool. We could get into semantics about what these things mean, but really you guys get the energy. It's like, what would you like? Let's go get it. So that's what we're doing. So the pleasure targets, we'd mentioned about being able to communicate your desires. And I think it's really important to be able to share the words first, because if you can't say them, what are you even thinking of trying to do them? All right, kids. So self-reflection is one of the ones we talked about in order to figure out what you would like, about your fantasies, your preferences. And then think about maybe part of the reflection is like, what did you do in the past that you liked? So we're keeping it towards things you liked. But if you have no idea, then you need to look at the things you didn't like, and probably the opposite is something you did like. Or you can at least know what doesn't work for you. So if you have no idea, on my website, milicajelenic.com, so MILICAJELENIC.com, you can go onto my website findmyname.com. So go on there. There is a do's, don'ts, and maybes list. It's pretty vanilla, but it can definitely get you started on figuring out through self-reflection of things you do like, things you don't like, and things you're willing to experiment. And by all means, get juicy with that, add some things, listen to some of the episodes, and figure out some of the other things you'd like to add to that, because there is a world of yum waiting for you. So we talked about communication. I talk about communication all the time on this show. Communication, consent, those are two of the C's, and curiosity. Those are like three of the main C's that I like to talk about on this show. Sometimes we talk about other C's that are four-letter words, but hey, that's cool. And if I could say that word, that C word that ends with a T, and not get banned, I would, even though technically, if we go back couple hundred years, that was a more proper term to use, because vagina just means sheath and blah, blah, blah. All right, cool. That leads me to education. So education and information can be really helpful. And if you can look at things like books, look at this podcast, go and listen to all my episodes. Well, listen to all the episodes that pique your interest, because they're probably going to be a theme there. You might find I've had some really sweet people write in and say, I've listened to so many of your episodes. Guys, if I've never written back to you, I apologize. Sometimes I get these chunks of emails that come in randomly, sporadically, sometimes after specific shows, and then I don't always get back to everyone. So I want to say thank you for writing. If I didn't write back to you ever at some point and you would like me to, just go ahead and write to me, and hopefully in the next few weeks I'll have a little time to go over emails and be able to write back to you. So education's really great. Like, knowing some basics about anatomy is really helpful. Where are the parts? What do they do? But education through your partner is even more important, because they can tell you what they like. So your best education, your best resource, is actually the person you're with. What a lot of websites in we'll say uh, magazines of sorts will say, you know what, you need to go look at, you need to do A, B, C, and D to your partner, and they're going to love it. And they're not necessarily going to love it, because not everybody's going to respond the same way to the same stimuli. And for some people, that stimuli might remind them of some traumas, and that's going to throw them right out, right off. So there are certain things that will make my body absolutely hurl with bleh. And I don't think you guys need to know what they are, because I'm probably not having sex with you guys, just saying, but you need to know what yours are, so that you can be really clear with your partner what works for you, what doesn't work for you. If you really have no idea, then things like books are great, and listening to podcasts that are going to give you information. So this one, I find, is pretty wide range. You get a lot of different topics on the Pleasure Zone. I have friends who have episodes that podcasts that are very much more specific, like a guest that's been on this show many, many times, Gaia Morissette. She has a podcast called My Orgasmic Life, and she talks a lot about kink on there. So, go over and listen to hers as well. Shout out to Gaia. She didn't ask me to do that. That was random. It just came out of my head. But there's also a lot of other folks out there that are highly educational, great podcasts. I like to recommend the podcasts of people that you might not have come across, because there are a lot there that are really common, like well-known podcasters. But I like to give a shout out to the ones that aren't as well known. So other things you can do for education, there are workshops. Like, one of my very first episodes, if not, was it my first? Maybe it was my second. My first episode was myself alone. And then I think within my next month, I had a guest on from the One Taste. Now, they are a bit controversial. There was a documentary done on Netflix about them, and there's some controversy about them being a cult, etc. But they actually did put a lot of stuff on sexual practices, things that you could do to achieve orgasm, like 15 minutes. But yeah, I would check, if you are checking something out like workshops, check it out and see who who the teachers are, what their organization does and stands for. Make sure you're not walking yourself into some kind of like accidental porn situation. Um, there were really great, there were some really great educators in sex that had sexual health workshops that have passed on in the last few years. There's a really great one who's still alive, and I don't think she's had some workshops lately, but her name is Regina Thomas Howard. Well, Regina Thomas. Anyway, she wrote, probably named Mama Gina. That's how I know her, Mama G. She writes about pussy, a reclamation. And so she does workshops as well. And there are an abundance of them. Most sex shops will actually have something in them that will be like workshops during the week or there to educate you for different ideas and things. So you can always go to those. And hopefully, the people who are educating you actually have some background in either sexual health or they're sexologists. Hopefully, they have some education so that they can address other issues. Because as much as you can be teaching people about how to have sex, you don't necessarily know how to navigate the situations of like when trauma comes up or if they need coaching, if they, it's good to have somebody who has some background. So education on the basics like anatomy, basic techniques is great, but your education of yourself comes first. Like, what gives you pleasure? Go discover what gives you pleasure. What do you like the feeling of? Oh, and there's also, yeah, workshops like doing touch blueprint. You can go do that with Jaya. She's very cool. And learn your touch blueprint and see what turns you on touch wise. So there's also tantra workshops, like whole weekend retreats. Oh, so many ideas for education. So put one of those, guys, put one of those on your manifesting your pleasure for the next year, just as an experience. If you've never tried it, what a great experience to have. So I think, if it's a workshop, even that's really specific, like knot tying so that you can give a really cool bondage experience to somebody, whatever you're into. So yeah, and you can do online courses, you can do in-person courses, you can read books on it. Absolutely. It's cool to practice. Fine. If you don't have a sexual partner, you might find that you just have a friend who's curious enough that's like, you know what, you can absolutely tie me up. Let's see if I like it. I'm kind of like that friend. So if you happen to be friends with me and you're like, I kind of want to try that experience, always felt weird, but you might be the person. Chances are, if we're friends, and um, I may do that for you if you ask me. So I'm not going to ask you because I find that would be peculiar. But if it's something you need as a friend, if you're listening and you need me to do that for you, okay. All right. So um, figuring out what the desires are, figuring out what the barriers are. So there might be some barriers with bodies. For example, if your body's overly stressed, if you have, for example, if you have erectile dysfunction, if you have vulvodynia, if you have physiological things going on that are causing pain or discomfort in any way that's causing that has inflammation that's causing you to stress, maybe there's even like endometriosis is incredibly painful. If you've had infections, that might also be very painful for your body or cause embarrassment. So you want to be able to deal with some of those things. And if you do have things like vulvodynia, and I've had some shows about like how to navigate having sex when you have vulvodynia, it's not about necessarily penetration, but finding alternative ways to have pleasure, which there are so many other ways to have sexual pleasure. So we want to figure out, is it the stress that's causing you to not be turned on? Are you feeling, awkward about your body or shy about your body? Do you have conditions medically, psychologically that might be a challenge? All of those things, once you kind of know what those are, some of them you can work on and deal with. Some of them maybe you won't be able to change. Like some medical conditions you might not be able to change, but you might be able to work your way around it. So I had a guest on several years ago named Trey Murphy, and we talked about how to have, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, how to navigate having sex with somebody who's in a wheelchair, because she's actually married to somebody who has a lot of mobility issues, and she's also works as a bit of a physiotherapist type job and trains people for getting their mobility back. And she's in the Carolinas in the US. So uh, I think knowing what those conditions are, she's so great and so cool, and that she's very open to figuring out ways to help people to be able to still have fulfilling sexual relationships in their lives, no matter what they think the boundaries or the barriers, rather, not the boundaries. Boundaries are good, barriers will stop you. So boundaries will give you clarity, barriers will stop you. So there also might be some barriers that have to do with, if you're in a relationship where you're, say, very religious and you don't want to have sex before marriage, cool. That's cool. Like, that's your belief and you want to follow that. Maybe you've grown up in one of those cultures where that's influenced you, but you don't agree with it. And now you're having a bit of cognitive dissonance around looking at the new way of thinking or being with your new thoughts and feelings. So just figuring out what kind of barriers there might be. So you might have your whole life felt that maybe you're gay and you're like, I don't know if my culture is going to accept that. So you kind of keeping it hidden. And in some cultures, you kind of have to, because there are a lot of countries now in the world that if you are openly gay, you can still be killed for that. So if you know what your cultural if you know what the cultural barriers are, like it's very hard to have sexual pleasure in a country where you're going to be killed if people find you having sexual pleasure. That's a tricky one. So if that's the barrier, sometimes it's like moving countries. Frankly, and it sounds terrible, but it is one of the options. And if you're in, like, you're not in the position to do that, then that's a tough one. There are some barriers that are really hard to overcome, for sure. But if you still need to talk about that, and you can, hop on my booking link. I will still have that open for a couple more weeks for people till the end of 2024. If you're listening in the future, to be able to hop on to a free half-an-hour call. Other than that, after the fact, send me an email and I will respond to you when I have the time. So another thing to do is, find a professional that you can talk with, support, whether it's a friend who's a professional. I got lots of friends who talk to me about stuff, or it could be therapy, it could be coaching, it could be counseling, whatever it happens to be. Don't think that you're alone, and there may be group work, there may be one-on-one, but you can also work through it, right? So, all right, now we're figuring out what those desires and barriers might be. We're going to move on to the next part when we come back from this commercial break. You're listening to The Pleasure Zone here on Inspired Choices Network, and we'll be right back after this commercial.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for The Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is the Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@milicajelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. Tonight we're talking about manifesting your pleasures, manifesting like your sexual fulfillment, getting some happy good times coming on. And I'm talking about this before the new year because it's not that it's a time of year thing, but I actually didn't want to bring it to the new year and call it a new year show because I think we can absolutely have this any time of year. And sometimes doing it before the new year will remind you that this isn't just a New Year's resolution type thing. This is what are your pleasure targets? Like now's a good time to look at that. If, if you happen to live in the Northern Hemisphere and it's dark out, you're probably going to be, well, to me, I go to bed earlier when it's dark out. It's just a natural sort of circadian rhythm thing that I do. But if what I could do is do some self-exploration. And I mean that like physically, I could do some self-exploration. I can do some self-exploration as in like journaling and writing. And that leads me into the next part of the conversation, which has to do with visualizing techniques and being able to create or like creating pleasure maps and journaling and all that sort of stuff. So alrighty, what I think I'm gonna like go right to some tools for creating pleasure maps. So one of the things that you can do, so what do most people do for manifesting is they'll journal, they'll do vision boards, they'll maybe write some of the ideas out. Partner at the vision boards, what do you want to collaborate on? What do you want to, collaborate with your partner, co-create, co-stimulate. Maybe co-stimulate's a good word. So, and you can draw your own, or, there are digital tools out there that you can grab to do this as well. So let's talk about first the journaling. So what do you want to journal about are some of the things that we talked about in that first segment about what do you desire? What kind of keeps your curiosity? What's something that you've also had in mind? Maybe it's something you fantasize a lot about, but you've never brought it into reality. And some fantasies are good to keep as fantasies, but sometimes you want to bring them into reality. So what you want to journal about are some of the things that turn you on. You also want to discuss with yourself in your journaling some of the things that really turn you off. So my do's, don'ts, maybes list can be really helpful. And also, what are some of your wildest fantasies that you haven't explored? And you might not even know what some of them are. So what you might want to do in terms of like figuring out what your fantasies are is you might want to watch some shows. And they don't have to be porn. You might find that on some shows you see like, I don't know, partners doing it on a yacht or something. I don't know, like whatever works for you that's kind of getting you curious and turned on, put that on your list. So when you're journaling, journal about the things that you're curious about that you've never tried. It can be stuff that's really maybe even sort of simple, like there are sometimes I end up coaching people who have very little sexual experience, or maybe they have experience, but they don't have a lot of variety. I think that's where, so there's not a lot of sexual variety. It's they kind of grew up in generations where there's like one way to have sex, and that's what you do is you kind of do the missionary thing, and it's all penetration and ooh, not the oral, that's scary. So so introducing other concepts, if oral is scary, then it's like, hey, let's look at, the things you might like to try, even though they scare you. Maybe, you know, hand manipulate, like manual manipulation with your hands. Maybe that's what you'd like to try. So think it's good to figure out some of the things like, and if they are scary, like what is the fear? You know, if you're afraid of blowjobs, like what's the fear? Is penis scary? Is it something that when you were little, like maybe you were sexually molested and the penis reminds you of that? So then if that's the case, then it's really good to work through that. And that's where seeking help and working with somebody who is a professional can really be helpful in working those traumas out, being able to move forward, being able to actually have pleasure. So, what gives you pleasure? What gives you joy? What turns your body on? What turns your body off, too? What do you like to do to other bodies that maybe you'd like done to your body? You know, sometimes you might be thinking, oh, I really want to do this and this and this to somebody. But in reality, it's like you'd actually like to receive that, that, and that, but you're too scared or you're not comfortable. Maybe there's like body shame that you have experienced, so you're not very comfortable with that. So write out those things too. Get it out of your head so that it can get out of your body so that you can either start to create it, like manifest the things you would like, actualize the things you would like, and or dump the things that you actually would like to change, right? So some of the fears. And with those fears, I really like the work of Byron Katie, and I mention her work a lot, but she has the four main questions that are really easy to follow. So if you do have a fear, asking the question of, is it true? Um, say it's like giving blowjobs. Is it true that you're afraid of blowjobs? Well, maybe I'm not afraid of blowjobs, but maybe I was afraid of the person that forced that on me. Okay. So how do you know for, so then the question would be like, how do you know for certain that it's true? Well, I know for certain that it's true because I experienced that and it bothered me. So without that thought, who would you be? How would you feel? Like without the thought that, you know, penises in my mouth equal uh, sexual abuse, I might actually try it. And then you turn it around like, oh, maybe I'm actually open to trying that, right? So is it true? How do I know for certain that it's true? Without that thought, who would I be? How would I feel? And the fourth one is turning it the 180 degrees. So that method I find really, really helpful and easy to navigate. Like you can use it for pretty much anything. So yeah, try that out for size. So vision boards is one of them. Lots of things you could do on vision boards that are like sexual vision boards. You know, you could, if you do watch porn, you could do screenshots, print those off, get those positions going. You could also just name them, put the words on your vision board of, you know what, I really want to go to a kink workshop this year. Like to do a kink workshop. I'd like to do an in-person trauma healing workshop through bondage. I'd like to try some tantra workshops. I'd like to, and just name it. Maybe get 5 new books on sex and pleasure, whatever you want. I think I just got 2 new books on sex and pleasure this week on audiobooks. Like I'm forever listening to as much information as I can. Usually it's also historical stuff that I am fascinated and interested in too, that has to do with sex and all things to do with sexual liberation and also the LGBTQ movement. So all that stuff I tend to listen to a lot of research books on those things. So vision boards, collect those images that you want, put them on a board, share it with your partner, make it a card. Merry Christmas. This is what I'd like to try. No, I'm just kidding about the card. But put it in a place, if you do have a partner, put it in a place where you could have half the board be the things you like, and then get your partner to add to that board, and they can put the things they'd like to try on it. And together you have this collaborative board, the co-pleasure board. So you have your vision board, and then when you have a vision board, the idea is that it's in a place where you actually look at it so that it's part of your conscience everyday things that you're thinking about, right? So you can have it there, you can look at it, you can meditate on it, you can take action too, because it's really helpful to take action. So you can look at that board a lot and you're like, I'm manifesting this workshop, and then this workshop pops up, but you don't sign up for it. The workshop isn't going to sign you up for itself, so you need to take the actions, right? So when you are manifesting something, you still need to take the responsibility of choosing it so that you can have it, so you can experience it. So I know, what a concept. So you can also, so one of the things is also called like pleasure mapping, was one of the things you can do. And I think one of the things that could be a really fun exercise with a partner is to get like, say, like a eyeliner or something that you can wash away off of a body, but you can write on as well. So like an eyeliner tool would be great, or using body paint. And you could write things on your body. If it is body paint, make sure it's edible, because this will be fun. And I'm just coming up with this on the fly, guys, because this is how my brain operates. But I'm visualizing a naked body with things written all over it, like lick this, suck this, tickle this, touch this, penetrate this, try this, do this, right on your body. It's a little bit fun. You could even write arrows on your body, like arrows that go, towards your nipples. Stimulate these, tickle these, suck on these, and then a little arrow that goes down. And now, suck on that. And then, put some arrows, you could put some words. You could have a lot of fun with this body writing. I think this is a super fun idea. You're welcome. So that's where my brain goes. So that, just like tapping into creativity on thoughts, can just bring up ideas of, hey, why not try this? So edible paints are good, but also like you can get body chocolates, or just make your own like chocolate sauce in like at room temperature so that it's still melty, like a little kind of ganache sort of texture. And with like a chopstick or with a paintbrush, you could write on the body with that too. Super yummy. All right, great ideas. My brain's gonna go into that thought for a little bit. So yeah, and you can absolutely use tools that already exist. There are all kinds of things that actually exist, like pleasure dice, and there's like cards for like positions and things to do. Say for example, like location, position, and then like adding on something else. Tools, it's like a vibrator in the anus in the bathroom. It's kind of like playing Clue, but in a very fun sexual way. All right, we're gonna head to our last commercial break. Time is flying when you're having fun creating a pleasurable future. When we come back, we're going to have a little meditation, a little visualization technique for manifesting your goals. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Are you secretly a voyeur, wondering what's going on in other people's sex lives? What if now is the time for a totally different sexual evolution? Are you interested in people who are pioneers of different sexual and pleasurable practices? Lean in now with Milica Jelenic, where she will entice you and your body to know your own pleasure zone. On the Pleasure Zone radio show, with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and a foundation to allow yourself to receive more in your sex life, and quite possibly other areas of your life as well. Listen for the Pleasure Zone with Milica every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific Time on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is the Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. To participate in the program today, join our live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also make the choice to ask or comment by email, info@MilicaJelenic.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, my sweet pleasure seekers. So the very last part, we're going to talk about visualizing techniques for manifesting your sexual pleasure goals. One of the things you can do is you can actually visualize while, masturbating. That's one thing you can do. So get scenarios into your head, build that energy, use that energy to then pull in those experiences and those energies, expand the energy. And I've talked about this on several shows, so I'm not going to give you guys like the the long version of this, because I've done like a walkthrough on how you can use you can bring the energy up with the visualization and then use your orgasm as an energy that goes out to the creation of whatever it is you're desiring to create, because orgasmic energy, or as Dr. Wilhelm Reich called it, orgon, is the one of the top ways of creating on the planet, right? Orgasm. Your dad, your sperm donor definitely had an orgasm. Your mom might not have, but your pa sperm donor definitely did. So another way that people talk about creating their future is to get out of the stinking thinking and get into more of a creation thought field. And I hear a lot of people talk about affirmations, and affirmations can work if you believe what you're saying. And if you don't believe what you're saying, there's this amazing thing where you can throw the word choose in there and it starts to change it. So I had a teacher who died last year, I guess. Yeah. And he was amazing at having he was amazing at working with affirmations where people would be like, I deserve to be loved. And then he's like, okay, do you like, do you believe that? And they're like, well, not really, but I want to. And he's like, want, okay. And it was amazing to watch him facilitate. One of the things that he would often say is just say, like, I choose to know and feel love. I choose to know and feel love. I choose to know and feel pleasure. I choose to know that. I choose to experience that. I choose to feel that. And then as that is like, oh, the body relaxes, like, oh, I choose that. Do I know pleasure? Oh, I know pleasure. The energy is like, I choose to know pleasure. Yeah. Well, pleasure grows, right? And then it's like, thank you for choosing me. I'll choose you back. It's an energy, it's a relationship. And then in time, it's like, ah, I know pleasure. I am pleasure. Oh, I am. Oh. And then it evolves. So if you're having a hard time with affirmations, it's probably because your brain knows you're lying to yourself. So remove some of those words that you're playing with that might be like I want, or there. And if you're not really sure what I'm talking about, hop on a call with me and we can go through your list and throw choose in there, like I choose pleasure and connection. Yeah. And then I am pleasure and connection. Eventually you become that. So do that, change the energies up, choose them first if you don't really believe it. And that's okay if you don't, because you're takes a while to switch the brain over. And then doing things like meditating. Meditating on, you can meditate on many different things, but one of the things that if you really want to have, depends on your relationship, what it's centered on. And I talked about that in a show a few months ago about what's the center and the core of your relationship. If it's like building an empire with money, then you're going to make in your relationship the most important thing the money. But if you're centering your relationship on something like the divine, then that's going to be the center, and that's going to be where you can always go to. So if it's each other, if you're making each other the center, then that can also be problematic. So meditating, not just by yourself, meditate with your partner, and you can meditate on many things, but I think meditating on love just as an energy, or the divine, whatever word you want to use for the divine, love, God, Krishna, you name it, the universe, use any of those ones that resonate with you and meditate on that with your partner, because that's going to bring you the the deeper connection that is going to be sustainable. So we want to be able to sustain these things and not have them drop away and just be forgotten. And you can also just check in with yourself, check in with your body and see what your body requires, so checking from head to toe or toe to head. It's like, check on your feet. Like, do your feet require attention and love? Maybe, because you know what? Sometimes when our bodies feel pain or inflammation or anything like that, sometimes we can switch it with just giving it attention. It's like pain is one of those body's ways of saying, pay attention to me. And then when you do, it can start to change. Yes, people do live with chronic pain, but also you can get out of chronic pain and even acute pain. as well. So there are ways to shift that. It's just a matter of diligence and finding the right method that works for you. So add love to your body, add like no judgment to your body, add all of that.
Thank you for choosing to listen to The Pleasure Zone with sex, relationship, and intimacy coach, Milica Jelenic. We'll return next Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 5 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. We hope you'll join us. Until then, have the best week of your life by choosing to be turned on